Right, my name's Tom. Some of you know me, some of you know me well, some of you know me a little bit. It's lovely to see you. I'm part of Woven, and I've been part of it only relatively recently. I'm an artist, so I draw pictures for a living, although less so these days. As all artists will find, it's been a bit of a difficult time. So Alison asked me last year to come up with these go and see events, and the idea is to get people who are interesting, like yourselves, to talk about something that they're passionate about. Now, the first of our people is Julia Roebuck. Give us a wave and say hello, Julia.
Hello.
There you are, brilliant. So Julia's going to speak in a little while for about 20 minutes about upcycle fashion, which is her passion as well as her business. So in a sec, she'll tell you all about that.
My name is Julia Roebuck, and I will have met some of you, if not most of you, throughout the Woven Festival last year. And I just wanted to really be involved in these go and see events so that I've got 20 minutes to talk to you about what I do through Upcycle Fashion, why it's important. And I did want to put a bit of time into having a discussion and generating some ideas around this unique situation that we're in now, and our opinions on textiles and the industry, and how we can work and use this time to improve. So this presentation was one that I've put together before this particular set of circumstances, so I'll talk you through life before present times. So I grew up in Home Firth, and went to Home Firth High School. I moved down to London to study textiles and fashion, and I studied at London College of Fashion and Chelsea College of Art and Design. I did my master's in fashion and the environment at LCF and graduated from that in 2011, which was really a key time for sustainability within the fashion industry. And being in London, I was lucky enough to meet with a lot of designers who were starting up their ethical or environmental sustainability brands, to be involved with campaigns that were affiliated to London Fashion Week. So Aesthetica was a big static exhibit that ran alongside, and that was the first time sustainability really was incorporated into the London Fashion Week. So use all of those opportunities I got to meet people in London really fed into me setting up Upcycle Fashion, which I knew from the beginning I didn't ever want to be a fashion label. It wasn't a brand. To me, building an upcycling label wasn't an appropriate business model for me personally at the time. So I went more into the service side of things. So that was immediately working and collaborating with other artists to come up with festival programs for repair, to encourage rewear, and to see the clothing that we own a bit differently. Okay, so I do make clothing, but I make it just to tell that visual story of transformation and how we can use either offcuts or sections of garments or whole garments by using some techniques and hand sewing predominantly to completely transform them. So there's lots of reasons why people discard clothing, and they can be from the very physical, in as much as it's lost a button or it's got a hole in it, to emotional reasons why we do keep hold of them. So it might not fit us anymore, or it might be damaged, but it means something and we have that emotional attachment to it, or we just love the fabric. And it's those kinds of reasons that I love to explore through my work, and why we keep clothing and then utilizing that, combining that with some skills to make it last for as long as possible. So my kind of tagline is creative sewing for lifelong clothing, on the understanding that the most sustainable garment is that which you already own. What's already in your wardrobe, if you can keep that for as long as possible, that sort of underpins the work that I do. So I do make clothing, but I don't sell it. I just use it to tell that story. And you know, when I'm out and about and working, giving talks and presentations and in schools and workshops, I wear what I make, again, to just reinforce that message. But my work is a service, so I collaborate with a lot of different people, which is the next slide. So sustainable fashion events, and a lot of my work over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, my main focus is utilising the community sector to make the most of textiles within a circular economy framework. So there's a lot of circular economy talk in terms of businesses and how we can make clothing the resource and feed it back into the cycle. But I feel that there's a real gap within communities to pick up a lot of the opportunities there, and to connect people with clothing, and to view our collective clothing. And that's something I'm going to come on to talk about a bit later as well, but that's just underpins the events and the kind of collaborations that I do. So Swap Shop Sew is a sustainable fashion event that runs in Home Firth, and I collaborate with the brilliant Fair and Funky on that event. We did have one that was meant to be on Saturday, but we had to cancel it. But we've got one in the diary for October the 24th. So if you want to pop that date in your diary, hopefully by October we might be able to go ahead with another clothes swap. If we can access Home Firth Civic Hall is where that one will be in October. But Swap Shop Sew is a model that brings together clothes swapping, shopping from a local ethical marketplace, supporting that local skills economy around textiles, and sewing, teaching garment repair and upcycling techniques. Online tutorials, that's something I've got into more over the last month due to present circumstances, and also having the time to really think about what it is that I want to do and how, from a technical perspective, I work that and who I collaborate with that. Obviously Woven's been great. That tutorial of how to make t-shirt yarn is online now. The pop-up climate emergency hub was something I did with Kirklees Culture Declares around the climate emergency, and I managed to bring together some brilliant, there's other people working around Kirklees around sustainability in textiles in various formats, whether it's from an ethical manufacturing perspective or local manufacturing perspective, or organic materials or reuse or customization. And there's some really exciting other projects going on. So I managed to bring quite a few of us together to do a drop-in there. And then also just giving talks, doing live upcycle events, doing skills training for hand sewing for various community groups, predominantly around Yorkshire, still a bit in London, but that's just because I still have quite a lot of contacts there from uni. So yeah, so Upcycle Fashion is a service. It's teaching, working, collaborating with people to give ideas, to be inspired, to keep clothing in people's wardrobes and lives for as long as possible. Okay, next slide, Tom. So first of all, I wanted to kind of approach the reason why do this, why run Upcycle Fashion, why do people need skills? And I'm sure that as part of the Woven community, you'll probably be very aware of the fast fashion system and how we have an increase in clothing consumption, in clothing purchases in the West, and a decrease in the active use of clothing utilization. This is a graphic from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They've got a brilliant Centre for Circular Fashion that they generate a lot of the data that they access and that they collect. They do some really great, quite simple data analysis with that to visually show the results not only of their work but of the data that they collect. So this one I like to use because I think it's quite an easy way to see volume of clothing that we buy increased, active use of clothing decreasing. And with that active use of clothing decreasing is incredible waste as well. Okay, Tom, next slide. Oh, Donna, that's from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on their circular economy. Contributing factors to the increased purchase of textiles, clothing is social media. Some of you might be aware of brands that are just completely online now. So brands such as In the Style, Boohoo, Pretty Little Thing, don't have any bricks and mortar retail space. It's all online, and they drop collections weekly. They use many different Instagram influencers. They spend thousands of pounds flying these influencers to very exotic or aspirational locations, giving them a whole load of clothes and then just telling them to, go crazy and do all these shoots. And then they use social media to sell. constant sales, constantly sort of matching and pricing with things that are other celebrities are using, and using the kind of catwalks and the celebrity style to filter that down very heavily into their rapid collections. So social media and fast fashion are now very much sort of welded together to accelerate the rate at which people are buying textiles. Okay, Tom. So this is a quote from a RAP report, so through DEFRA. In 2017, they did a big report called Valuing Our Clothing, and the research there, on average, the active use is 3.3 years. So again, rapid consumption means rapid disposal. So we, as all of these systems and these models, have essentially degraded clothing to become single use. In a lot of the way they refer to plastics, clothing is definitely, for a lot of people, single use items. They only purchase it with the intention to buy it once. Okay, Tom. And again, this situation that we're in now, 2 months ago, I'd have said we are predicted to increase the amount of cheap clothing that is purchased, and that's where a lot of these stats around the waste come from. So in line with the increase in waste due to the increase in fast fashion, the predictions around the finances for these fashion companies were set to, they are keen to grow. They want to grow and grow and grow. And in line with that, the waste textiles will grow. Now, what I'd be quite interested in is, after my presentation, having a bit of a discussion around where we think that might be headed now. And a lot of the reports, and some people might have seen, obviously Primark don't have an online e-commerce site, so their sales are £0. So they are not going to be increasing sales for the spring summer season, but it would be really interesting to have a bit of a discussion about ideas for that. So yeah, fast fashion, increased consumption, decreased use is a perfect storm for horrific textile waste. Okay, Tom. I want to just pop in here about the ethical and environmental side. So a lot of the time when we talk about sustainable fashion, and brands that really do value the people and planet, is called with the triple bottom line. So people, planet and profit together. But unfortunately, for too long, a lot of brands have completely disregarded the people and planet and completely favoured profit. And what you get there is the price that we pay for clothing not truly representing that, and a lot of other factors picking up the costs. So, for example, with manufacturing of cotton, it's incredibly water intensive. It's a very water thirsty crop. The impact on irrigating cotton farms, and a lot of people losing their livelihoods who depended on water, the waterways and the rivers, they pay with their businesses or their economies degrading, with people whose rivers are polluted by the dye factories or the tanneries in other countries around the world. They pay with their health. Microfibers, again, I've just sort of used water to link, because I think water is quite a good one that represents that. So water consumption, water pollution, but also the way we launder our clothes and the volume of polyester. And it's even the same for fleeces and recycled polyester. So if you have a fleece that's made out of recycled plastic bottles, then a lot of the time that's branded as being quite a wonderful thing, but it still contributes in the laundering processes in our homes to microfiber and microplastics in the waterways. So people on our planet, our human resources and the environment pays the true cost of our clothing, which has to change. And the true cost is also the title of a fashion documentary that some of you might have watched. So solutions, hopefully I'm about half, oh, maybe not, I've gone a bit over, but solutions, I'll talk really quickly. One, citizen skills. I like to break these down into just 3 categories: citizen skills, loved clothes last, and collective clothing. Okay, so Tom, if we go first into citizen skills, this is about upskilling citizens with the skills they need. As you are all aware, in the last 50 years, we've gone from these skills being passed down intergenerationally and taught within a school's environment to neither being taught in a school's environment nor being passed down in the family homes on the scale that they were just a generation or two ago. So and again, this is where I feel like communities have a lot to offer in terms of spaces for repairing, mending, customizing, utilizing these hand sewing skills that we need to bring back in order to take action and become more responsible owners of our clothing. Okay, Tom, second one is loved clothes last. Again, on that premise that the most sustainable garment is that which is already owned. That yes, those skills that we own and can do on our own clothes, but also pushing that out into retail and what the brands and the stores can do. So ideally, what would be fantastic is if we start to see, and again, this might hopefully prompt a bit of a discussion around what we'd like to see after this this unprecedented situation, would be for brands to be offering services alongside, instead of just selling their product, they're offering services around repairing and alterations. And a few brands and stores are already doing this. This was the photos from Levi's in Bologna, but Toast are already doing these. So a workshop program where they have a skilled tutor or a skilled craft person who hosts workshop in store, so people can bring their clothes and make their physical bricks and mortar retail stores a space where people want to come and be more involved within their communities and learning skills and having an experience rather than just buying and selling clothing. And the idea of, thirdly, of re-commerce. So you might have seen a few brands post this and push this out for London Fashion Week. Mulberry was one. So, and Toast is another one. Again, they're doing great sort of thinking around the idea that love clothes last. But if you have a clothing brand that is manufacturing clothing that they are proud of, that they can shout about their story, that they value, and they want their customers to value it and love it too, then let's bring that back in. And again, thinking from that circular economy perspective, we're bringing things back into the store. So if you've got an old Mulberry bag, and this is what they were doing at some pop-ups in London Fashion Week, bring the bag back in, and either there'll be a skilled leather worker there who can help you learn some techniques to look after it or repair it, or you can effectively trade it in. So, you know, kind of part exchange your vintage Mulberry for a new Mulberry bag. Mulberry keep hold of it and sell it. Again, this idea of re-commerce. So keeping their vintage, because it's such good quality and it's valued by the customer, that kind of re-commerce business model I think works really well. And I think a lot of brands should aspire to do that, to keep hold of the clothing that we love, to encourage longevity, to encourage those customer relationships and build support in that brand. That's my timer. Okay, Tom, we'll go through. And again, collective clothing for community. Tom, you can go on to the next slide for this one, and I'll just wrap up quickly. But here again, so thinking of clothing as a collective asset within our communities. So that might be the geographical location of where we live, or within your online community. So obviously we've got eBay and Depop for reselling and sharing clothing as an asset within those community spaces, but also thinking a bit outside the box and thinking creatively about what we have in our communities and what spaces there are to engage people with secondhand economies. So swapping is a great one. Obviously I mentioned swap shops so earlier. I'm a passionate believer in bringing the communities together to celebrate and share clothing. So I totally get that people will come to the end of the line with relationships with some of their clothing that they just don't want anymore. It doesn't fit them and they have no desire to make it fit them. So pass it on to somebody who will love it again and love it for longer within these spaces. So that's either swapping, sharing, renting, community social enterprises where you donate clothing but you receive credit, and not just a charity shop where a lot of people, the vast majority of the population, just use charity shops as a dumping ground for the stuff they don't want. Imagine if we had spaces where people wanted to donate, but they also wanted to stay for half an hour to either look through the rails. That was an exciting, immersive retail space to be in, where they could maybe do a workshop, where they could pick up some bargain basement bits, where they could pick up a tutorial, where they could see an exhibition of garments that have been made within their community. So some real creative thinking going on around spaces in our community to look at clothing as a community asset and really how we get the most value out of that rather than dumping it to charity. So shocking statistic in the true cost, overall only 10% of clothing that's donated to charity is actually sold in the charity shops. They are on fortnightly collections, so whatever's not sold in the charity shop within 2 weeks immediately just goes to rag. Oxfam have a slightly different model because everything goes back to their waste saver facility and they can redistribute to festivals, or they can go a bit further and grade it for their export, but they are selling it into a second export economy. They're not donating it to Africa, they're selling it back into their second-hand economy. So I love a charity shop, don't get me wrong, but they aren't serving the purpose for the majority of the population. And to have a radical shift to engage people with secondhand, we need new solutions. Again, so there's a photo there from Swap Shop Sew and the poster that was from last year's event. And Girl Meets Dress is an online store. So these are just some tips for shopping. So when you are looking for a new item of clothing, so will you wear it at least 30 times? Hashtag 30 wears is an online sort of social media challenge to encourage that idea of re-wearing, to fill kind of people's social media feeds with not a different image every single weekend of every party or every wedding you go to is a different outfit. You know, can we kind of change the visual narrative there around repetition and clothing continuity of the same thing worn differently and being loved, rather than just having to be shot in a different dress every event? Choose to reuse, so look second-hand first. Vote with your wallet. Every penny you spend, you're making those decisions and you're supporting the aims and the values of the retailers that you're buying with. So really look into their accountability and their transparency, and can they truly answer the question, who made your clothes? Looking again in some of those ideas around re-commerce, skills, repair. Is it more than a store? Are they really trying to engage you within that circular economy? Do they value their product in the way that they should? Or are they looking at it as a disposable item that they can shift as fast as possible? And alternative materials, cotton and polyester are two most dominant fibres. Cotton's incredibly water thirsty. There's a whole issue again around the pesticides. It's not all organic. Polyesters are oil, and alternative materials really can make a difference. So there's some brands pushing out some really interesting fibres. Cellulose fibres, yes, do use wood pulp, but there's some ways in which they can manufacture those within a closed loop economy. And further ideas, again, Greenpeace on pesticides and toxicity in terms of dyeing, Ellen MacArthur Foundation for Circular Economy, and Fashion Revolution. It's Fashion Revolution week this week. Woohoo! So find an item of clothing and ask the brand, who made my clothes? That's the Fashion Revolution challenge that they are setting.
Right, well, I'm just sitting here feeling very smug because I'm sure I've got some pants that are over 20 years old, so I'm all right. No, but one of the questions I had, just to kick us off actually, is I often think, well, I want to have an ethical fashion, I want to sort of buy something that is going to last, though I kind of think, well, if I spend more money on some clothes, that might help. But my problem is that some of the retailers, they cost a lot, but they seem to be as flimsy and rubbish as they are if they're cheaper. So is there a list of retailers locally and nationally that we can look at that could help us make those decisions?
Yes, absolutely. So that, yeah, I think there's 2 points there, Tom. So sustainable fashion, or, you know, fair trade does cost more than the likes of what we're seeing on the high street. But not all expensive clothing is ethical. So that's just something to be mindful of. And the fact that the, you know, higher end high street retailers are manufacturing in the same factories as the lower end retailers. They just take a higher margin. So it's not, the price you pay doesn't reflect the values of the retailer. It doesn't mean that the garment worker predominantly is getting any more money. So it's not just as simple as spending more money on a garment. And yes, there are sustainable fashion brands who will, again, champion and shout out about it, and they will put this on their website as well. So I would say, if you are interested in in a brand, or if you've seen a garment online, go to their website and look, check out, is their sustainability policy or a modern slavery act one of the first things you see on their homepage, or do you have to scroll all the way down and click through about us, click through corporate social responsibility, and then click through and find a tiny thing? The brands that really are championing it and taking responsibility will be shouting about it as well, and it will form an inherent part of what they do and their message, and they want to communicate those values.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, some people have started sending me chat messages, which is basically asking you a question. So what we'll do for the next 8 to 10 minutes is I'll go through those questions, and what I want is specific questions that Julia can answer. Okay, so we've got a message from Glenys. Now, she's heard on the radio that if you buy a piece of clothing online, you might buy a couple of sizes, 3 or 4, just you weren't sure, because you're never quite sure which size fits you.
Yeah.
You check your size, you send it back, and there's a story that the supplier doesn't actually return the clothes to the shop, they just chuck them away. Is that true?
Yes.
Oh God. Are there particular companies that are doing this, or is it all of them?
Well, so returns is really tricky. So essentially, it's kind of grown into a bit of a monster, has returns, and you are right, they don't have, again, it comes just down to profit and costs. It's not worth it for them from a cost perspective to link up their returns depot with their dispatch depot, to pay somebody to take out the item to check it, to make sure that it's not damaged or faulty or whatever. And a lot of brands will completely discard it. However, there's Joe Lycett did a sort of he's got a consumer awareness program, and some of you might be aware of this. He bought a whole load of, and I know one of the brands he mentions is Boohoo, which is an online company, and he bought a whole load of sort of leotards and swimwear and things, and he stained them with Marmite, and returned them, posted them back, bought them immediately online, and they dispatched that he got the exact same ones, the stained ones, back.
Okay.
So I think so in some cases they are resending and not checking, obviously, in the cases of those they will case, but on the whole companies really haven't got their act together in terms of bringing back in returns and putting them back into a collection and then selling them again. There's a lot of waste that does come from returns. So one of the things I do talk to people about a lot is just be really mindful of buying what you're buying through online.
Oh, as if there wasn't enough to make us feel guilty. That's great. There's another question here from Dion, and that's about, I suppose the last month has seen a huge change in the way that everyone lives their lives, and we're all doing less, spending less. Some of us are. I know I am. But so, are there any statistics on how, waste consumption? That graph obviously is like people are consuming more fashion. Are there any stats for the last month or so, or is it too early to kind of make that?
Not that I'm aware of, but the so as part of Fashion Revolution, they've published the Fashion Transparency Index. If you search on the Fashion Revolution website for that breaks down in, there's lots of criteria for brands and how they approach a lot of other ethical sections of their report, really, on that.
And sure there'll be a lot of stats in the future.
The only stats that I've seen recently are of the factories who have cancelled orders by volume and by cost. So at the top of the list are the ones who are holding on to as the most contracts as possible, and then the ones right down at the bottom, and I know that Primark was one of the ones right down at the bottom in terms of cancelling orders. So there's Trade is a charity based in London around textiles and waste and fair trade, and they've put a link on their social media today for fundraising to support a family in Bangladesh who's lost their job. The factory have closed down. Primark haven't paid them any money. The factory have put the upfront costs for the material and the labour, and Primark have just pulled that contract straight out from under them. So there's thousands, if not millions, of garment workers affected by us not buying clothing.
Can we go back to, Karis has got a question. Can we go back to that idea about the brands and the ones that throw away returned items? How do we know which brands are doing that? Who are there? Are there ways to, like you said about the ethical fashion stuff? You can look at their website, but this is quite a specific issue. Is there any lists of people who we know that aren't, or that are the worst? We kind of know who the worst offenders are.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any official data on who the worst offenders are on that one, but there's a really interesting TED talk from a lady that researched it in America, who really gets into the nitty gritty, and I can't remember what her name is, but if what I can do is make a list of things and I can send out some links to people.
Yeah, I think that'd be really useful, because a lot of things have come up, and if you make a note of that. There's a couple of comments really. One is about laundry skills, which so Anne's keen to sort of say that it's, the whole use of fabric conditioner possibly is that a good thing, and the way that our clothes are washed affects how long they last. And also a point about that I was going to raise with it is, obviously we want to value our local food retailers, and we sort of have high street shops like butchers and bakers and grocers that we want to go and use because it supports the local economy. But do you think that people might be encouraged to sort of buy their clothes locally in a similar way? And are there sort of people doing that we can support in Kirklees?
Yes. So by the nature of wage costs in the UK, clothing made by independent, designer makers is going to be more expensive than going to H&M or Next or, ASOS or whatever. It just is. So I think, first of all, if people are willing to understand that and realise and the value, they'll have to pay more. But there's different ways of options. And I mean, a lot of the way even though it's low cost fast fashion, a lot of the fast fashion brands do finance options, so pay, that's what it is, well, I guess if you're buying £55 t-shirts, then it's, then you might need to finance it. But there's, a lot of brands, like ethical brands, are looking into finance options, so that even though it's a larger cost, because of either the fair wages that they're paying to factories, or that, they're taking a high cut, or the studio costs, the higher costs are more expensive in the UK. But yes, so local brands, obviously there's McNair, who are manufacturing in Slough. There's these just off the top of my head, but there's Hebtroco, who are fantastic menswear, actually, Tom. So if you're looking
yes,
Bridge. And so a local designer again, Holly Carr, who's got Pockets clothing, and yeah, there's.
These could be put in a link as well, if there's a few that already, that to sort of give people a chance to sort of know what the local shops are. Yeah. What about
as well for price points? Again, it kind of comes back into that community, that alternative to charity sector. Can we be thinking of creative ways to maybe at a lower price point, utilising secondhand clothing within our communities? I think that's a really valid reason. The places that we can go locally to get secondhand clothing within a really great retail space.
And anything quickly just on that laundry issue before we move on?
Yeah. Oh, anything I want to add about laundry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, a lot of the statistics around carbon footprints and water consumption in our clothing, the majority of that does come from the laundry phase. If you think of the phase of a garment, so you've got the materials, you've got the manufacture, you've got the retail, you've got the use phase, and then you've got, well, in a linear economy, you've got the discard. In a circular economy, you'd have that going back into the system. But as so much of the carbon footprint and the water consumption comes from the use phase. So if we've got, it makes a massive difference if you're air drying rather than tumble drying, if you iron very little, if you reduce the temperature that you wash at, if you're using, Ecover instead of, I'm not going to go into other, but look for laundry detergents that aren't as polluting and wash less. Ultimately, just wash less.